Dr. Pavitra Bharadwaj. I work as Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science, Jesus and Mary College, University of Delhi. So friends, this is an ongoing series and this lecture is a part of the series which is talking about Python programming. So this lecture is actually focused on writing complete programs in Python. So we have already discussed in the last few lectures that the basics of Python language, how Python can be installed, how Python can be run on systems, what are the strengths of Python language and what makes it one of the most popular programming languages in today's day and age. So now in this lecture we are actually going to talk about some basic functions, some basic elements which are required for writing a complete Python program. So friends, we understand that Python can run in both formats, that is it can run as a script or it can run in the IDLE or Python, the integrated development learning environment. So both ways Python can be run and Python programs can also be therefore executed in both the formats, either in the form of a script or in the form of the interpreted commands that we are going to write and we are going to learn. So when you talk about writing complete programs, so there are certain basic constructs that one has to know that before you begin writing a program. Now it is interesting that many of the people who are already programming in other languages like C and C++, they may find certain concepts of Python which are very similar to those languages, but there are also some important variations which one has to pay attention in order to write error-free programs. So in this lecture we will be talking about some key identifiers and keywords which are used in Python. Then we will be talking about the operators and the literals which can be used, the different types of literals which are used in Python. After that we will talk about the various command line statements or the command statements which are used, the statements which can alter the flow of the program which are also called as the control statements. And we will also look at some of the errors that come, commonly occurring errors which may come into the programs while we are writing the scripts. So let us quickly begin with talking about identifiers and keywords. So basically, what are identifiers? Identifiers are actually names which are used to identify a variable or a function or a class or a module or any other object in Python. So it is basically an identifier is a name which can be used. Now this can be used for a variable or it can be used for an object or class or a function. So you can have, you can declare a variable like x is equal to 10. So here x is the identifier, or you can define the name of a function, say my function. So that my function is an identifier here. So we can have different types of identifiers and there are some rules which are to be followed before you name the identifier. So basically in Python, the name must start either with a letter or with an underscore. That is, you cannot start the name of a variable or a function with a letter, right. So the underscore can be can be the first character, but other than underscore no other special character or digit can come. Then the names are always case sensitive. So we need to remember that the uppercase and lowercase in identifiers will be an important element to be careful of, and of course you cannot have your keywords as the identifier. Certain keywords are there which cannot be your identifier, right. So you can have a variable name like variable underscore name, that is okay, right. You can have underscore my underscore variable, that is also okay, but you cannot have two variable. Why? Because it cannot start with a number, or you cannot have a dash or hyphen within the variable name. So you cannot have my dash variable because that is not allowed. Only underscore is allowed in the special characters, right. And then you can also have, you cannot have a variable name called class. So if you define say a variable called class, that is not allowed. Why? Because class word is a keyword, it is a reserved word for the Python language, therefore it cannot be use. So, these are some very basic, very simple rules which one has to keep in mind before the identifiers, that is variables or functions or classes, are named, right. And also we must have a look at some invalid, that is if it begins with a number or there is a hyphen or there is a keyword which is being used as an identifier. And if you are not giving the correct, if you are not following the correct variable name, then Python is going to give you a syntax error. So, that error which you are going to get is a syntax error, because you are violating the syntax of the language. So, we said that identifiers cannot be keywords, right. So, what are keywords basically? So, keywords are the reserved words in Python that have special meaning, and these cannot be used as identifier. For example, if or else, while, class, def, for. So, these are some keywords which you cannot use in as identifiers. Why? Because there will be a clash between the reserved word and the identifier. So, these are certain keywords or reserved words which cannot be used as identifiers, right. Now, both keywords and identifiers, they are equally important for a program, right. We understand that identifiers are essential for naming and referencing of variables and functions, whereas keywords, they will form the syntax and structure of the language, right. So, both have got their own significance. Like for example, in this you can see you write def my underscore function. So, here def is a keyword which is used to define a function. My function is the name of the function. So, here my function is actually an identifier which is being used to identify the function, and then again we have two keywords, if, true. So, here if and true both are keywords, and then you have, you give some command, say print hello world or print something. So, what is this? This is an example of how a program is built using keywords and identifiers. So, keywords will define the syntax, they will form the syntax and structure of the program, whereas identifiers will be used for naming and referencing of functions, variables or classes within the program, right. So, we need to remember that identifiers are the names for the variables, right. There are certain rules which you need to follow when you are defining or when you are declaring an identifier. It has to start with a letter or an underscore, it is case sensitive and it cannot have keywords, and keywords are reserved words which have got special meanings. And we always need to remember that when we are defining the identifiers or when we are declaring the identifiers, those should be meaningful and descriptive identifiers. So, when you look at an identifier, you must be able to understand what is the purpose of that particular variable, or particularly what is the purpose of that specific function. So, it should be inferable from the name of the function, from the identifier of the function. So, functions, therefore identifiers should not be chosen arbitrarily, but one should be mindful when you are choosing the identifiers for your variables or for your function names, right. Then when you start constructing or when you start building the programs, right. So, then you also come across certain data items which will have fixed values, that is whose values will not change during the course of the program. So, such data items are known as literals. So, literals are those data items that have got fixed value, right, and they are the most important and the most basic building block for creating programs, right. So, you can have literals like 1, 2, 3, you can have literals like a string literal, or you can have a Boolean literal, right. You can have a numeric literal, you can have a string literal, or you can have a Boolean literal, right. So, numeric literals will be of again 3 types, like you will have an integer literal, or you can have a float literal, or you can have a complex kind of literal. So, 3 types of numbers can be considered as literal. So, you can define a literal like a is equal to 10, or you can define say pi is equal to 3.1415, or you can define a complex number like c is equal to 1 plus 2j. So, this is literals can be defined, numeric literals can be defined as integers, floats or complex numbers. Likewise, we can have string literals also, where we will define a sequence of characters which is enclosed in quotes. Now, this is too important to be remembered, that a string literal can be anything. It can be a character, it can be a number which is enclosed in quotes, right. Now, you can define string literals using single quotes, or you can define string literals using double quotes, or you can define the string literals using triple quote. So, basically when you are using a triple quote, it is used for multi-line string. When your string or your literal is a paragraph, okay. So, in that case it will span multiple lines. So, then you need to use triple quotes to tell the compiler, to indicate to the compiler that this is a string literal, but it is spanning or it is running through multiple lines. So, string literals can be defined using single quote, double quote or triple quote, right. Then when you are working with data, definitely you need to have some operators, you need to have some facilities for performing operations on that data, operations on those variables or on those literals that you want to perform, right. So, these operations can be performed using certain operators, right. So, operators are basically the symbols that perform operations on the variables and the values, right. So, you can have different types of operators for different types of functions that you would want to perform on different types of operations that you would want to perform on your data or on your variables. So, the first type of operator is the arithmetic operator, which of course the name itself suggests that these are related to mathematical processing of data. Then we can have comparison operators, then we have logical operators, then we have the assignment operators, and we have the bitwise operators. So, all these operators are specific in their purpose, but we will also see that certain operators can act on different data types also. Operator overloading that we see, that we can see here, that the same operator when applied to different types of data can give you different types of results, right. So, you can have arithmetic operators like the simple arithmetic operators, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulo, exponential, right. So, what are these operators? These will perform the simple basic arithmetic operation. Modulo operator, we are all familiar that it will give the result, it will give the remainder of the operation. So, if you write 5% 2, so it will divide the number 5 by 2 and it will give you the remainder as your answer. So, if you say 5% 2, then the answer or the value which is returned will be the value 1, right. So, you can have all these types of operators, right. Then if you look at an example of these are very simple operators. So, plus operator will do a sum, minus operator gives you a difference, product is the star operator, then you get the division operator, the modulo operator as I just said. So, here the modulo operator is returning a value 0, because when you divide 10 by 5 the remainder is 0. Then you have the exponential operator, right. So, if you write 10 raised to the power 5, so the value is 100,000, and then you have a slash 2, that is you are dividing the number a by 2 and you are only taking the integer value. So, this is integer division. If you put the 2 slashes, it is giving you an integer division. If you put just 1 slash, then it is going to give you a floating point or a decimal point in the answer, in the value. Then of course, we have the comparison operator to compare two values and return a Boolean result. So, Boolean result means that it will give you a result as true or false, right. So, the first comparison operator is equal to, which is to check whether two values are equal or not. Then you have the not equal to operator, then we have the greater than, less than, greater than equal to and less than equal to operators. These are all very standard operators that we find in all most programming languages. So, this is a simple explanation of how the values are returned by the comparison operator, right. So, whether it gives a true value or it gives a false value depending upon the statement which is being compared. So, you can see here that the operator is being used with a function print. So, print is a function and directly we are using the operator in the print function here. Then we have the logical operators where we can sort of combine multiple Boolean expressions. So, we have one Boolean expression and another Boolean expression and you want to compare the you want to combine the two. So, you can use logical operators, that is the and, or and not operator, right. So, if you have two values that is true and false, then you can have A and B, that is if both are true. If one is true and the other is false, then it will return the false value. If you have the OR operator, then either of the values have to be true for the value to be true, and if it is the NOT operator, it will inverse it. Now, it is also to be understood that later on when we look at the conditional operators or the conditional functions or the conditional statements, then these will become more useful, because then we will actually have two expressions which will actually be evaluated into a Boolean value, that is it will result, the expressions will result either in a true or a false value, and then depending on that we will be using the logical operator. So, the logical operator part is actually more applicable when you are learning the conditional statement, the if else statements, right. Then we have the assignment operator, that is these are specific operators which we are looking at, particularly when you are looking at Python. So, these assign values to variables. So, the first assignment operator of course which is used is the equals to operator. So, you can simply write A equals to 10, this means you are assigning the value 10 to the identifier A, right. But then you have another assignment operator which is plus equal to. So, if you write A plus equal to 5, it means you are writing A is equal to A plus 5, right. Then you can have, similarly you can have minus equal to or multiply equal to or divide equal to. So, it will, these will all imply the same thing, that is A multiply equal to 2 means A is equal to A multiplied by 2, right. So, likewise we can have all these operators, again we can have exponential equal to also, that is star star equal to, which means A is equal to A exponential 2, and if you have double slash equal to, it means A is equal to A double slash 2. So, these are sort of combination operators which we use for assignment. So, instead of writing two lines of statement, we will simply write A is equal to A plus is equal to 5. So, it is sort of a shorter way of using the assignment operator. Then when you have learned about operators and you have variables, then together when you combine the operators and the variables together, then you can compute a value. So, when you are using a combination of value and operator to compute a value, that is known as an expression. So, what is an expression? Basically, an expression is a combination of value and operators that compute to a given value. So, you can have a simple expression like A is equal to 10 or B is equal to 5, or you can have a more complicated expression also, right. So, basically an expression is something which is computing a value, which is giving you a value in return, right. Then you, so basically in this section or in this part we have talked about the literals, that is what are the fixed values like numbers and strings, what are the different types of operators, that is the symbols, what are the different functions which these symbols will perform. Okay. Then we look at the expressions, that is how these values can be combined, okay. And then we need to create some kind of expressions which are going to sort of run or create a relationship or create some give out some value using the variables and the operators, or using the literals and the operators that we have defined, right. So, after we know that after we have declared an identifier, or we have created a literal value and we have put some operations, some operators or some symbols between them and created expression, then we need to come to another important part of writing the Python code, that is how you will take input and output from the user, and what will be the control structures that are going to control the flow of program in your in the code that you have written. So, we will be talking about the input output statements and the control structures in the following lecture. Please keep watching CEC. Thank you.